Hello everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Video Clips. And I'll start with some information from about our friend Fauci, and it's part of the ongoing series, just a new installment in the "Why does Fauci still have a job?" question. So I'm just going to review for you and then tell you his latest antics, which are pretty amazing. On May 12th, Fauci told members of the U.S. Senate that cities and states could see more COVID-19 deaths and economic damage if they lift the stay-at-home orders too early and too quickly. He urged extreme caution, and he even stated that children may not be able to go back to school. On May 22nd, and that's just 10 days later, he told CNBC that the stay-at-home orders could end up causing irreparable damage if they go on for too long. Quote, "I don't want people to think that any of us feel that staying locked down for a prolonged period of time is the way to go," he told anchor Meg Terrell. He went on to say, quote, "Now is the time, depending upon where you are and what your situation is, to begin seriously looking at reopening the economy, reopening the country, to try to get back to some degree of normal." That's a turnaround. And nobody calls him on this. I mean, if I were a reporter in any news station that Fauci had appeared on, I would say it was only 10 days ago that you were expressing caution about this, and now you're basically saying that what you told people to do is going to cause irreparable damage. And while we're at it, let's review some of the other fabulous events in your track record, Mr. Fauci. He used two models to make his initial predictions, one which turned out to be 96% incorrect. That was the Imperial College. The other one, 56% incorrect. On the basis of bad information, he makes statements that cause many governments to lock down all of their citizens, and in several states those lockdowns are still in force. He never acknowledges that he was wrong, and the lockdowns continue along with cancellations of events and graduations and arts festivals and wedding receptions and funerals and so on. This is absolutely inexcusable. And you know what? In my world, we don't get to blame somebody else for our mistakes because, the models were wrong. Well, Fauci, you chose them, all right? And you never really did look into the camera and apologize to the American people for the havoc that you've wreaked on everybody's lives. He tells the public that children aren't affected by COVID until discussion begins about opening schools, and then, like magic, have you noticed that? Word that COVID might be affecting children is out. He testified to the Senate that we should be careful about the school openings. He also said that reopening would lead to more cases and death. That's all the dictatorial governors needed in terms of excuses to continue to lock down their people. Caution, stay home was the message. Then he says the consequences of the actions that he actually caused to happen were going to be severe if we didn't reverse course quickly. So tell me again why we are still paying this guy with our money. It is our money, by the way. I pay taxes. You pay taxes if you live in the United States. So his salary is partly due to our graciousness in letting him stay on the payroll. He wouldn't be on my payroll very long, I'll tell you that. So, and again, I think about if somebody here at Wellness Forum did something that egregious, something that was so wrong, and refused to apologize and make it right, they wouldn't have a job. In fact, even if they apologize, they might not have a job because it would represent a level of incompetence that I don't want to tolerate here at this company. Now, thanks to Fauci and his erroneous messages. I mean, he may be a well-known virologist, but he's an incompetent as far as I'm concerned. So thanks to his incompetence, we have literally civil war going out there in the marketplace and in the across the country. So let me give you an example of that. In Mississippi, the First Pentecostal Church in Holly Springs filed a lawsuit last month against the city over its public health order. City Attorney Shirley Byers said that the church was issued a violation on April 10th. After 40 people had gathered inside and were not properly social distancing. The police disrupted Bible study and Easter Sunday service. The lawsuit says that social distancing is practiced and the congregation only moved inside because of inclement weather, prohibited them from being outdoors. On May 22nd, the church was burned to the ground, and what was sprayed on the parking lot was, quote, "Bet you stay home now, you hypocrite," spelled HYPOKRITS. Ignorant, stupid people did this. It was painted on the church, in the parking lot of the church. It's being investigated as an arson, and what I think is really interesting is the people who burned the church down, they weren't staying at home when they showed up to burn the church down. So, you know, Mr. Fauci, if you watch my videos, you should be answering for a lot of things. I mean, you're a criminal, common criminal, in my opinion. And what you have done is criminally negligent. There are statutes for that, and the damage that you have done. I want your legacy to be this. This is what you caused. I hope you're real happy with yourself. I've said this before, that I hope these people. What do they say when they go home? You know, when I was talking about our governor last week. He tells his wife, Fran, you know what? I kept a little girl from being with her parents when she was dying, but I've got the patio patrol, making sure people in the patios of restaurants aren't too close to each other. I rock. You know, what do these people say to themselves, right? Okay, so some people really do get it. An Illinois judge, Michael McCaney, issued a temporary restraining order against the Emperor Pritzker's stay-at-home order on behalf of a tanning salon that sued the governor due to the closure of his business. And of course, there will be appeals, and there are many other cases pending. There are lawsuits being filed every day all over the United States. But what made this case, I thought, particularly interesting is the judge's comments in the decision. And I'm going to read it to you because I think it's great. Since the inception of this insanity, the following regulations, rules, or consequences have occurred. I won't get COVID if I get an abortion, but I will if I get a colonoscopy. Selling pot is essential, but selling goods and services at a family-owned business is not. Pot wasn't even legal, and pot dispensaries didn't even exist in the states till 5 months ago. And in that 5 months, they've become essential, but a family-owned business in existence for 5 generations is not. A family of 6 can pile in their car and drive to Carlisle Lake without contracting COVID, but if they get in the same boat, they will. We're told that kids rarely contract the virus and sunlight kills it, but summer youth programs, sports programs are canceled. 4 people can drive to the golf course and not get COVID, but if they play in a foursome, they will. If I go to Walmart, I won't get COVID, but if I go to church, I will. Murderers are released from custody, while small business owners are threatened with arrest if they have the audacity to attempt to feed their families. These are just a few examples of rules, regulations, and consequences that are arbitrary, capricious, and completely devoid of anything even remotely approaching common sense, what I've been saying for weeks. States' attorneys in this case, county sheriffs, mayors, city councils, and county boards have openly and publicly defied these orders, followed by threats to withhold funding and revocation of necessary licenses and certifications unless you obey. Our economy is shut down because of a flu virus with a 98% plus survival rate. Doctors and experts say different things weekly. The defendant cites models in his opposition. The only thing experts will agree on is that all models are wrong and some are useful. The Centers for Disease Control now says the virus is not easily spread on surfaces. The defendant in this case orders you to stay home and pronounces that if you leave the state, you're putting people in danger, but his family members traveled to Florida and Wisconsin because he deems such travel essential. Talking about the Emperor Pritzker here. One initial rationale by which the rules don't apply to him is that his family farm had animals that needed fed. Try selling that argument to farmers who have had to slaughter their herds because of disruption in the supply chain. When laws do not apply to those who make them, people are not being governed, they are being ruled. Make no mistake, these executive orders are not laws, they are royal decrees. Illinois citizens are not being governed, they are being ruled. The last time I checked, Illinois citizens are also Americans, and Americans don't get ruled. The last time a monarch tried to rule Americans, a shot was fired that was heard around the world. That day led to the birth of a nation consensually governed based on a document which ensures that on this day, in this, any American courtroom, tyrannical despotism will always lose, and liberty, freedom, and the Constitution will always win. I think it's one of the most brilliant court decisions I've ever read. And I think that it just shows you how ridiculous that this is, that a judge would write such a scathing criticism. You know, usually just judges rule and they tell you what the constitutional issues are. This guy felt the urge to set the record straight, and I thought it was a beautiful portrayal. And by the way, just so you know, if you want transcripts of the video clips or articles, any of our articles, you can become a member and get access to that. But we can't mail these. You know, we just don't have the capacity here staff-wise to mail them. So you can become a member and have access to this stuff. All right, here's another consequence of the current situation. According to Shelley Alwang, she's the program manager at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the fake COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in a huge increase in the number of reports of children being abused. In April 2019, NCMEC received about 1 million reports. This April, 2020, 4.1 million reports of child abuse and exploitation were reported. Staff attributes this to bad actors who are taking advantage of the fact that children are out of school and at home, and parents are trying to homeschool and do their jobs, and it's just very difficult. Kids aren't spending time outside and playing with their friends anymore and spending a lot more time online than before. And that's something I think we should think about with all this homeschooling. I don't know anybody prior to this whole debacle who would have said, what would really be good for kids is if they spent more time inside and online. Okay, so again, the public health consequences of this and the public health pronouncements is just the stupidest, most ridiculous thing I have ever seen. So anyway, there are more opportunities for exploitation with the kids online, and teachers are giving assignments, and I think it's great that they're trying to give them assignments that require research and that sort of thing. But the more time kids spend online, unsupervised by parents who are trying to do their job across the room, the more likely they are in doing Google searches to end up landing on a site they shouldn't be on, or catching somebody's attention, the bad actors that patrol online and see that the child is available and online. And by the way, they know what's going on. The bad actors understand completely what's going on. So it may not be that everybody else, some of the sheep still don't understand what's going on, but believe me, the predators know that the kids are home and unsupervised and that sort of thing. Those are the kids that are in school. Then we got the kids that aren't homeschooling because they don't have internet access and don't have enough computers in the house, and this is just ridiculous. All right, so I want to talk about the Emperor Inslee. You've heard me talk about him before. He's appointed himself the Emperor of Washington State. He's not a governor, he's a ruler. And here's what's going on in Washington State. A Nigerian fraud ring called Scattered Canary started receiving funds from the Washington State Unemployment Office, including the $600 a week that has been added by the federal government. They used personal information stolen from past data breaches and filed thousands of claims with the state's Employment Security Department and received hundreds of millions of dollars. In other words, this was not like a tiny breach and $5 million is gone. This is hundreds of millions. Major flags were missed, such as payments to out-of-state banks and the use of suspicious-looking bank accounts. A recent $44 million software upgrade was supposed to prevent these types of things from happening, but it clearly did not work. This has resulted in legitimate claims not being taken care of at this time, and in fact, a lot of people reported to the newspaper, I won't read you all the stories, that they were getting mail from the unemployment office saying that we have to do further verification, and if you won't provide the right kind of information, we may have to take the money back. That's what people who can't feed their families need to hear right now. Great public policy. Well, one of the reasons, according to officials, is the system is overloaded. They've gone from normally 5,000 to 7,000 claims a week to over 181,000, and by the end of March, 860,000 people unemployed. Great public policy, right? The Washington State Department of Health has confirmed that the state is classifying deaths from other causes as death from COVID. In other words, what the English translation for that is that they are falsifying death certificates, that's what we call it, and including gunshot wounds are now being classified as COVID. Now, I guess indirectly you could say that because there are more violent acts going on now that everybody's locked down and poor and doesn't have food. I mean, if you've seen the lines from the food banks, you get online and see what goes on at 4 o'clock in the morning in parts of New York. People lining up, hundreds, thousands and thousands of people. They run out of food every day, okay? Take a look at that. And it's just despicable. So according to one report, here's some of the language being used. 82% of the death certificates that were looked at list some variation of COVID-19 as one of the causes of death on the death certificate. 5% don't list it as a cause, but indicated that it was a significant condition contributing to death. So 87% of the death certificates in Washington are probably inaccurate. When asked about the report, The Emperor Inslee stated that it was dangerous, disgusting, and malarkey, and went on to talk about conspiracy theories. Well, apparently the Department of Health is part of the conspiracy because they provided the data. I mean, come on. Here's more from the Department of Health. Quote, our current dashboards reflect anybody that has died from COVID, irrespective of cause of death. Those numbers will be adjusted. We are really trying to figure out how to best report out the information of the COVID deaths in a way that is more understandable and is still accurate and is in real time as possible. Let me help you, the Department of Health. Here's what you do to make this best report the information. Tell the truth, right? Our process for identifying COVID-19 deaths, I'm quoting from their website, basically speeds up our regular process but cuts out much of the data quality processes. So we're lying on the death certificates 87% of the time because we're in a hurry and because we really don't know how to report the information. Tell me what the cause of death, putting that on the death certificate. What's so confusing about that? We didn't used to have this kind of confusion in terms of what we put on death certificates. So I mentioned yesterday that I don't think we know how many cases there are. I don't think we, and I'm going to talk about that tomorrow as well. We don't know how many cases there are. We don't know how many deaths there are. It's all been manufactured. This is all made up, okay? And people write to me once in a while and say, you really think this is all made up? Well, I don't know. You tell me your interpretation of all of this. And then we've got this clown at the top, Fauci, who changes his mind every other day. He's wrong about everything. And we still let him be the head of the whole thing. Here at Wellness Forum, if you're wrong about everything, you don't last very long here, okay? When I hire contractors, if they're wrong about everything, they don't get invited back. We don't hire them again. So anyway, maybe it's time to clean house. Maybe it's time for an awful lot of elected officials to find other work right now because they certainly don't belong in the business that they're in at this time. All right, that's all for today. Pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. Remember, if you're interested in careers or participating in one of our free sessions, please send me an email, pampopper@msn.com. Happy to provide past newsletter articles if you sign up for the newsletter. And I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news.